Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you so much.
Kris, of course, now we're into election campaign mode. All kinds of promises and threats, I think, are being made. Prime Minister Trudeau saying he's thinking about a 1% speculation tax on your second or recreational home. Is this the kind of thing Canadians want?
You know, that's a great question. Here in BC, I do actually get quite a bit of mail from people who are quite upset by the speculation tax. Number one, they're really upset about being called speculators. Number two, some of these folks are Canadians, and they've worked their entire lives to have a home in a different place from where they usually live. Many of them are folks who have worked crazy hard across the prairies their whole life, and now they've got a nice little condo or something out here in more of a vacation-y area, places like the Okanagan, places like the south of Vancouver Island, and they're terribly upset because they're being punished for that. And a lot of times, these second homes aren't suitable for mass rentals. You know, that isn't causing the housing crisis. And so we get a lot of folks who are saying, number one, we're not speculators, and number two, we're being punished for having worked hard all of our lives. There must be a better way to deal with housing shortages, of which that is true, especially in the Vancouver area of the Lower Mainland in BC, without just nuking people for happening to own property. We think that this is a form of a punishment. And so if they start trying to do this across Canada, we don't think that a lot of Canadians are going to like that.
Well, in so much of Canada, having a cottage or a cabin is a way of life and an escape from the urban environment in the summer. So I can't imagine people in Toronto cheering that somebody wants to tax their cottage up in Lake Country.
Yeah, just imagine if they start heading up to the Kawarthas or different places where they have their cottages. So for those of us here in BC, this is kind of like having a cabin up in like the Shuswap or the North Okanagan. For people in the Toronto area, they drive up and they have a cottage. Now, some of them are very fancy, nice cottages, but it is their own property. And the main point is these cottages and cabins aren't commuter homes. They aren't rentals that are like your standard rancher that's, 20 minutes out of downtown Toronto that your average family would want to or be able to rent from year-round. These are seasonal homes in most cases, and it's theirs. They're being punished for having private property. So you're right. Just imagine doing that now across Canada. And in Atlantic Canada, they call it the camp. Quite often, if they're able to have a home elsewhere outside of their regular residence, it's called the camp house. And it's way up in the woods somewhere, often down a pitted gravel road. They're going to start saying that is somehow contributing to a lack of rentals. This is just, they're taking advantage of the affordability crisis as a way, and finding a way to make money. The same way that they're taking advantage of the true concern people have for the environment and making money off of it through the carbon tax. It does nothing but take money out of our pockets.
Carol James, the BC finance minister, had a big smile on her face as she said, the BC speculation tax, so-called education tax, which isn't an education tax, and taxes on foreign buyers have forced house prices down by 8%, and she thinks that's a good deal. For most people, that means you've lost 8% of your equity.
Exactly. For those folks who already own a home, that means that they've lost out on their equity. What is it actually doing to find people places that they can afford to live? Diddly squat. So if they want to actually help people find places that they can afford to live, cut the red tape, reduce their taxes and regulations on new builds, and let the industry build more housing. If you increase the supply, you will meet the demand better, and the prices will drop. That is what they need to do. And it's a great point you make about the so-called education or school tax. This is a special tax that's on homes over a certain amount of cost. So I think it's over $3 million, and it's usually affecting main areas like West Vancouver and some parts of North Vancouver. They called it a school tax for no reason. It goes straight into regular government revenue. They called it a school tax so that we wouldn't complain about it. The point is that it's actually a homeowner's tax. Because if they start at $3 million or whatever, it's very easy for them to get greedy and set their sights a little lower and say, okay, well now it's $2 million. Now it's 1.5. Now you're hitting most people in Vancouver who have a single family home. And all it is just, again, a bigger and growing government looking for more and more taxes. And we're worried that these taxes are only going to continue to go up because, as we saw, their surplus is dwindling to a razor thin.
Well, also, too, with the Carol James announcement, does she have any evidence that her taxes actually were the things that drove the house prices down? Because isn't that part of the natural cycle? Prices go up, prices come down.
That's a great point. And we also need to keep in mind that a lot of folks in BC are running out of their own money, too, because they're facing a bit of a crunch with jobs. So we've seen forestry jobs getting affected here in BC, and obviously lots of folks used to depend on the energy sector in Alberta, and they would fly back and forth. They'd come home to BC. That's got to be playing a role here as well. If they want to start looking into, foreign ownership, where folks just literally own properties all over the place here in BC, don't live here, never come here, and they live somewhere else, and they're just constantly flipping it, I think that's a separate issue from Canadians owning a cottage or a second property or a condo, or happening to own their own home, which happens to be valued well. Some of those folks in West Vancouver have owned those homes since the late 70s, early 80s, and they want to stay in their homes. They don't want to sell. But now their families are being punished because their property happens to be worth money.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're talking with Kris Sims. Up to the start of the election, how much money did the Trudeau government promise people? 8 billion? 12 billion? It was an incredible number.
It is a staggering number. I think the number was actually closer to 12 by the time the dust settled and the writ officially dropped. And we need to stress, lots of politicians will do kind of a run-up of spending leading up to when they call the election, but this was exponentially bigger. And this is coming from long-time press gallery reporters and analysts, people like David Aiken from the Globe and Mail, or rather from Global TV, who have been watching this kind of spending now for year in and year out, and they took the cake. So they ran away with it. They racked up billions and billions of dollars in spending announcements right up until the election announcement. So it was shocking. And what was really interesting and sad to see is most of the time it was in ridings where they were really hoping to pick up seats. There's got to be a way of putting a damper on this, because what they're doing is they're using taxpayers' money as kind of a big party push before the official election. So there must be a way for us to look at this after this next one is done, and we take a look at how it went, There must be a way to put goalposts around it to say, for this amount of time, politicians, can't be making these kinds of announcements outside of, obviously, a flood or a disaster. That a certain amount of extra spending just can't be announced because it's unfair. They're trying to bribe you with your own money, taxpayers' money.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Andrew Scheer is campaigning on the promise of trying to make life more affordable for Canadians. One thing he said he'd do is give back the 15% tax credit on transit passes that Trudeau took away. Why would Trudeau take away something that would be considered green?
That's a great question. It was kind of strange that he did it because it kind of fits with his mandate of what he said, helping the middle class and those working hard to join it, and also something that's green, so in a transit pass. And, while we understand that these sorts of tax credits are popular, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of them during the election campaign because politicians seem to like these little boutique tax credits. When you really add it all up, this is beef jerky when what we want to see is steak. We want to see actual meat on the table here with reductions in income tax, big reductions in taxes, canceling the carbon tax, big stuff like that will save Canadians tons and tons of money, not little tiny bits of tax credits here and there sprinkled to fit their life at the end of the year when tax time comes. Because really what this often amounts to is just a way of endearing themselves to voters. It doesn't wind up adding up to a lot of savings for most Canadians. What we would like to see is actual big, deep tax cuts, including things like an income tax cut and canceling the carbon tax. That would keep money in Canadians' pockets. But hold on, you're going to see more and more of it. It's going to be just a beef jerky corner store this entire election campaign.
Well, what about upping the federal tax exemption? In Alberta, I believe it's $25,000 before the province starts charging you income tax. Why can't the federal government do that? Let people pay their own expenses first before doing the government.
That's a great idea, and that seems much more fair. And it's a lot less paperwork, right? You're not having to nickel and dime and check here and there and do all these forms and having extra bureaucrats on hand to help you analyze whether or not you qualify, blah, blah, blah. No, if you just put like a firm line down there and say up into this amount, you're just exempt, that frees up a lot of that red tape and it saves you money. And so, yeah, that's something that makes a lot of sense and would save people a lot of dough. And then again, we just want to see the real tax cuts come in here, the tax reductions for Canadians, both personal and business. And so we think that would have a lot better effect than these cute little boutique, put it in the front window tax credits. And we understand the reason why. We hope the intention there is good, and these will probably be popular. It's not a terrible thing, but it's not really effective.
And when it comes to the personal exemption for provincial income tax, when Ujjal Dosanjh was the premier, I think that's when Alberta brought in their $25,000 exemption. And I said, why doesn't BC boost their exemption, which I think was $8 or $9 grand, to $25,000? And he said, well, Jim, that would cost the Treasury $3 billion. And I said, so, sir, you admit that the government is running on the backs of the working poor. He just walked away.
Wow. Wow. That's a great quote. And to say it's going to cost the Treasury $3 billion. Think of what that means. If you flip that around, that means that taxpayers, those low-income taxpayers, would be getting back $3 billion in their pockets. in their bank accounts.
And that's money that would go into the economy.
Exactly, because then they'd be able, to buy their kid those hockey skates. Probably still used. They probably still have to walk or take the bus to school, but that money would be going back into the economy. Maybe they'd be able to eat out, at least once a month, or buy those extra groceries sometimes, instead of scrimping and saving and finding it all the time. That money would almost always go back into the economy, because folks of that income level, unfortunately, often can't save. It's not like it's going to be hoarded away in some Cayman Islands account somewhere. It would go back into their spending in order to make their lives of their family better. And so, yeah, that's really disheartening when you hear politicians say something like that.
The Auditor General says there's something like $55 billion in owed taxes out there. Why doesn't the government hire the people to go after that?
You'd think that they would. If it's that much money, and there's that much money that they can pull back into Canada, where people are trying to directly evade it, and they've got that much dough that they can actually do that. Imagine having that much money that you're just dumping it into a foreign account somewhere and trying to run ahead of the tax man. For the average working Canadian, that's just James Bond level stuff. But they'll go after the average working Canadian. They'll go after a waitress and say, oh, we're not sure if you declared all of your tips while you're working yourself, to the bone at 3 a.m. at the nightclub that you're serving at. Or they'll go after the cab driver and say, we're going to check up on every single little bit of cash fare that you got. They'll go after those folks here in Canada. But we don't see them doing hardly anything to go after the people who have millions and millions and millions of dollars and are hiding their money in offshore accounts.
You have a favorite little critter now that's a mascot of the Taxpayers Federation. Can you tell us about it?
He's so much fun. So we've had him in the family of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation for a little while now. And you might remember that when politicians make a big, big, big promise during an election campaign, they'll often say things like, I'm going to look you dead in the eye and this. They fill in the blank. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau during the last federal election promised, the capital P, promised to balance the budget. He didn't do it. He broke that promise. And in a very big way. He overspent by tons and tons and tons of money. And so, one of our favorite mascots within the CTF family is a little guy called Fibber. And he looks like a wooden puppet, and he has a feather in his hat, and he's wearing like some green jodhpurs, and he's got a long, long wooden nose to show when he's not telling the truth. So our friend Fibber greeted Prime Minister Trudeau at his opening rally in Vancouver this week. So it was nice to see him wave to the Prime Minister as he arrived on his bus, and he waved to him again as he was kissing babies going in and out of the rally. The Prime Minister actually looked right at us for a really nice picture. It's on our Facebook page right now. And so it's a message to politicians, no matter what party you're with. If you promise Canadians during an election that you're going to do something and you fib and you break that promise, you're going to have a pal come around and greet you at your rallies or pop up wherever you happen to be. And his name's Fibber, and we're there to remind you.
Kris, what was your impression of the Prime Minister not showing up for the debates?
One of our main focuses at the CTF is accountability and transparency. And what I'm hearing from folks, even if they intend to vote Liberal or Green or NDP or Conservative, it doesn't seem to matter which party, a lot of folks seem disappointed that he didn't show up to a major debate like that. That was a major televised national debate, at the Monk debate. And as far as accountability and transparency goes, if you're not there to answer, that doesn't look great.
Kris, anything else you wanted to bring up?
I just wanted to again stress to folks, no matter how you vote, this is your democracy. And I encourage everybody, if you have time, go to your local candidates debate, listen to what your local candidates are saying, find out more about him or her and what they plan to do, and be very active during this election. Really get to know their platforms. And it really makes a big difference when you decide to go into that voting booth. Because an informed voter group are going to be a more active voter group, and that's better for everybody. It's better for our democracy.
Do you feel a lot of people don't bother to vote because they feel they've just been lied to, so why vote for a liar? We
understand, which is one of the reasons why we bring Fibber around, because you can either laugh or cry. So we totally understand that feeling of, I just want to throw my hands up in the air and cry. And we're there to remind people that we know it's not a perfect system, but it's the only one we've got. And if we don't take care of it, we might wind up with something worse. So bring a bit of joy into it, a bit of levity, poke them in the eye, and remind them of their responsibilities. And so I just really encourage folks, do go out there and vote. Make sure you do. And it'll make you feel better if you get to know your candidate more. You'll be more likely to be able to see where he or she is going with their policies. So do attend those debates and go to those meetings.
Kris, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. If you have any questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. And by the way, you can get more information about the Taxpayers Federation from their website, taxpayer.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.